On this episode, I'll be trying out the sourdough pumpkin cinnamon roll recipe from Farmhouse on Boone. The first thing you need, of course, are the ingredients. We need the sourdough starter, all-purpose unbleached flour, coconut oil melted, pumpkin puree, pumpkin spice, and honey. I also added, instead of water, sweetened condensed milk, and about a quarter cup of potato flakes. The first thing you want to use is your active sourdough starter, then your honey. I use the sweetened condensed milk, of course the pumpkin puree, add the melted coconut oil, the flour, all-purpose, unbleached. Then, of course, you need to add your spices, pumpkin pie spice and cinnamon. Don't be mad at me, but I added more cinnamon than pumpkin pie spice because cinnamon's my favorite. Then, of course, once it's all kneaded, you need to let it sit overnight. Say goodnight, sourdough.
Good night, sourdough.
The great thing about this recipe is I love how it can be adapted to fit your time schedule. I will be the first one to admit that I am not a morning person, and I had decided to make these for our church potluck, which was going to be later on in the afternoon. So, of course, in the morning, I didn't have to worry about rolling it out and working on it. So, coffee. When we first moved to this house in 2020, I had a really hard time with the kitchen. And I'll be honest, I still kind of struggle with the amount of counter space it lacks. But we have a really nice big dining room, so it works. And I had to paint it my favorite color. You can hate teal all you want, but it's still my favorite. There was still some time before we had to leave for church, so of course I had to head out to my favorite spot, where our green beans grow. They're best picked right in the morning, as the dew is still on them. The sweetest, crunchiest, best way. While I was out there, I had to pick some mint too. I love the smell of mint plants. Once we were home from church, it was time to get lunch ready and set the table. The little ones helped me with this.
Work goes on the left. Good job.
After lunch, it was time to continue on with the pumpkin cinnamon rolls. We had to add the eggs, baking soda, baking powder, and salt. I definitely agree with her that using a stand mixer would have been much easier, but I guess we like to do things the hard way. My littles and I added more flour, probably because I was tripling the recipe, so I must have not put enough flour in it to begin with. Once it was all kneaded, it was time to make the cinnamon filling. You need softened butter, pumpkin puree, of course still, organic brown sugar, cinnamon, and pumpkin spice. Of course, someone had to taste test the brown sugar. I love the colors of turquoise and orange together. Just beautiful. After the filling was all done, it was time to add it to the dough and roll it up. This was quite a challenge for my little one, but we had fun. After rolling them up, it was time to slice them and put them on the baking sheets to bake. This was me drizzling the last of our heavy whipping cream. The very last, I totally forgot to buy more. Whoops. Thankfully, the other pans that did not get the drizzle of heavy whipping cream turned out just fine. Once they were all ready, it was time to go in the oven. Preheated at 375, I put all 3 pans in and cooked them for about 20 minutes, but knew that I had to cook them a little bit longer. Maybe about 5 more minutes. After every time we bake together, there's always a mess, especially with the littles. I've come to accept it, usually, and try to have fun with it too. I feel like that story of the hen who wants to make bread, and she asked the dog and the cat to help her. They don't want to, not for any part of it, until it's time to actually eat the bread. Then they're all hands on deck. Now it was time to take these delicious cinnamon rolls to church and share it with friends. I put the cream cheese topping in between 2 of the baking sheets. It had a lid on it, so I thought it was secure. Till we got to church, and I opened up the trunk door, and it had spilled everywhere. Not a single drop of cream cheese topping left in the measuring cup. Well, thankfully, the cinnamon rolls were still delicious. I just had a big mess to clean up afterwards, which is pretty typical for me.